Thank you so much. And I'm glad that I can be here. Thank you for the invitation. As Zrinka said, and I think everyone before me, it's a really nicely organized the conference. So I'm really glad that I can present some things that we've been all working on in Croatia, in Zagreb. Yeah. So diet has an important role in the formation of social structure and the evolution of human cultures. So information about the type of diet and dietary habits of ancient populations may be obtained from historical sources by studying the animal and plant remains excavated at archaeological sites and by analysis of teeth and stable isotopes of human osteological material. In Croatia, the dental-alveolar analysis, for example, recording the caries, the antemortem tooth loss, abscesses, dental wear, calculus, etc., are more represented because they are simple macroscopic analysis that do not require special apparatus and large amounts of money, but they provide an insight in dietary and hygienic habits of an archaeological populations. In contrast to that, stable isotope analysis are less prevalent, although the preparation is for now completely done in Croatia at the Institute for Anthropological Research. The final mass spectrometry analyses are conducted in laboratories that are outside Croatia and are expensive. So, depending on the period, of course, historical records are sometimes more or less present, while archaeobotanical and archaeozoological analysis are still quite rare. So, bioarchaeological studies conducted on the human skeletal remains from the late medieval and early modern period of continental Croatia are in general relatively well represented compared to those from other periods. However, there are some specific features. Most of the studies dealt with dental health in were only for the one of the mentioned periods, either late medieval or early modern age. Or they were taking comparisons between two periods in adults. Child health from these two periods was observed through the prism of subadult growth, subadult stress, and infectious or metabolic diseases. Only one preliminary study to determine the quality of life of children in the area of medieval and early modern Podravina employed indicators of subadult stress like cribera orbitalia, porotic hyperostosis, and endocranial newborn formation, metabolic disorders such as scurvy and rickets, and a dental health indicator, caries. Considering historical sources from continental Croatia from periods from the late medieval and early modern periods, there is actually a large number of published papers. However, there is still a smaller number of those dealing with economic history, from which the type of food and the dietary habits can only be indirectly interpreted, or those dealing with the lives of children. Archaeobotanical and archaeozoological analysis are the main information about the diet of the inhabitants of a certain time and area, but such studies are unfortunately rare in Croatia. For the late medieval period, only 4 archaeobotanical studies have been published so far. A great number of works are represented in the field of archaeozoology. Most of them are aimed at determining what kind of animals were represented at a particular site, fortification, castle, monastery, which taxa of animals were exploited the most, or which hunting strategies were applied. Although archaeobotanical and archaeozoological analysis are very useful, it is difficult to conclude who ate these foods and in what quantity. A more direct and detailed insight into diet can be accomplished through the carbon and nitrogen stable isotopes. So far, only one study combined both dental-alveolar analysis and stable isotopes in a representative sample from late medieval and early modern period from continental Croatia. Unfortunately, nitrogen and carbon stable isotopes analysis with the aim to reconstruct subadult diet for these periods has not yet been performed for continental Croatia. evident gap in studies dealing with the reconstruction of subadult dietary habits and general subadult health for the late medieval and early modern periods of continental Croatia led us to consider conducting research by using a holistic approach involving both conventional and advanced methods. So we submitted a project proposal in February, I think, so we are like thinking maybe we will get the project or maybe not, but we will see what we can do about all the skeletal material we have and what methods we can use. So why to study exactly this period? The period, so Orshi was saying something about that yesterday at her presentation, and it's really similar with what I will say. So the period between the 12th and the 14th century in the territory of today's Croatia was a time of relative peace and prosperity, marked by the establishment of new towns, international trade, social development and colonizations of merchants, craftsmen and peasants from Western Europe. The first half of the 15th century, during the reign of Sigismund of Luxembourg, was marked by numerous political and administrative reforms, modernization of the state and military organization. The situation in the second half of the 15th century started to change. At that time, Croatian history was marked by the growing Ottoman danger and the dynastic struggles. Slavonia was experiencing a crisis of urban living, which manifested in towns, economic and demographic weakening. The Ottoman invasions in the 16th century reduced Croatia and Slavonia to the remnants of remnants. The nobility accepted the Habsburgs as new rulers, and the newly devastated areas were inhabited by the population that came from the regions under Ottoman rule. Apart from these political circumstances, it is necessary to consider the effect of the global climatic environmental crisis caused by the Little Ice Age, the cool and rainy climate regime in the Carpathian Basin, which was well detectable from the beginning of the 16th century. Since climate change affects agriculture and the economy, health, society, and culture, as well as migration, it can be assumed that climate change influenced the diet of that period. All these negative changes, called spiral of death by Jurkovic, caused a demographic catastrophe with a reduction of 3/5 of the population. All these negative changes certainly had a significant impact on numerous aspects of life as well as death for the largest part of the population, especially children who were the most vulnerable part of the society. So, conventional methods refer to historical methodology, the study of different types of written sources, published and unpublished, such as urbaria, text lists, judicial and property records, normative acts, including those dealing with inheritance law. Post-field archaeology work, all studied sites will be examined for the funeral rite and grave goods, which includes position of the burial within the cemetery, position of the skeleton in the grave, type of burial, presence or absence of grave goods, and typological and stylistic analysis of findings. Of course, the standard bioarchaeological analysis, estimation of age, examination of present dental pathologies, caries and linear animal hypoplasia, as well as study of metabolic disorders like rickets and scurvy. Advanced biochemical and biomolecular methods include the analysis of the bulk carbon and nitrogen stable isotope in order to reconstruct the diet, incremental nitrogen and carbon stable isotope microsampling of dentin to better understand infant, childhood, and adolescent dietary patterns, and amelogenin protein analysis for the purpose of sexing the subadults. This multi- and interdisciplinary approach will be used to provide answers to several important questions regarding health, diet, and developmental stages in subadults. Did the previously described historical processes in the early modern period influence the diet and dietary habits, the duration of breastfeeding and the weaning process, caused any sex differences in subadult dietary habits and the duration of breastfeeding? And did the urban or rural context have an effect on diet of children and the duration of breastfeeding? So here is the map of the continental part of Croatia. Osteological and dental material to be analyzed during the project is related to human bone remains dated between the beginning of the 14th and the end of the 18th century. Considering the specific historical circumstances, the research will be divided into 2 time periods, and for now 8 sites will be analyzed from each period: late medieval period and the early modern period. So I don't know if you can see, but some of the cemeteries lasted longer, like from 13th to 18th century. Some of them are clearly late medieval sites from, let's say, 14th to 16th century. And there is some of the cemeteries that were like only early modern period. So for now, we have like 300 skeletons, subadult skeletons. But excavations are going on several sites, so we are expecting a little bit more skeletons than this. This project proposal, if it passes, will gather scientists from several institutions from Croatia and abroad. So 2 scientists from the Institute for Anthropological Research, 1 historian from the Croatian Institute of History, an archaeologist from Institute of Archaeology, 1 from Croatian Conservation Institute, 1 from the School of Dental Medicine, also 1 foreign scientist from the University of Bologna, and a colleague that is here, Orsola Matijević Laslo. Yes, she will be the expert also for subadult health. So all phases, beside mass spectrometry, bulk stable isotope analysis of carbon and nitrogen, are done at the Institute for Anthropological Research. The novelty is the introduction of a new method into Croatian scientific institutions, is isolation of incremental analysis of stable carbon and nitrogen isotopes for the reconstruction of children's nutrition, and thus the detection of weaning processes. Also in progress is the establishment of a protocol for the analysis of the amylogenin protein, which is planned to be implemented at the Institute in the future, and at the beginning will be performed at the University of Bologna. So one great example of a site that we plan to study is Lipanovac Pustošina, Grgurevo. It is located here at the south of continental Croatia. So the first time it was the settlement was mentioned in historical sources in 1261, while the church dedicated to St. Gregory, which is called Grgurevo, is mentioned in 1332. So, So what is interesting about the site is that children are buried in as many as 41 out of 46 graves, which makes almost 90% of the sample, and that was excavated in 2023 campaign. We have also material from the last year, but it still hasn't been analyzed completely. But we saw, again, a lot of subadults. So these subadults are dated to the second half of the 16th to the beginning of the 18th century. Most of the children die between birth and 1 year of age. So also a lot of them were in the fetal age group and in newborns. And altogether, those 3 categories make almost 80% of whole subadult sample. So we also noticed that there was a lot of scurvy. We took criteria by SNUDI. So in a whole sample, there were 60% of children who showed diagnostic criteria for certain scurvy, and an additional 15.5% of possible scurvy. So again, in a newborn category, 7 out of 8 subadults had scurvy, and 1 had possible scurvy. In age group 0 to 1 year of age category followed this trend, and the fetuses category also. So the 3 youngest categories are the largest in terms of the number of children, but also in terms of the prevalence of scurvy. So in this side we see some unusual demographic distribution, but also high frequency of scurvy in small children. Samples, so far we have done, we took some samples for bulk stable isotope, and amylogenin analysis is actually in progress. So instead of conclusion, so apart from Grgurevo, some other early modern period sites are showing worsening of the living conditions through indicators of subadult stress, scurvy, and caries frequency. That corresponds very well with the historical records, constant Ottoman threats, little ice age, and the population of this area. So this is why it would be great to get the project proposal and to see with other methods, including multi- and interdisciplinary approach, reconstruction of diet, weaning process, estimation of sex in subadults, also collaboration between different scientific fields, and collecting as much information as possible to try to answer asked questions. So thank you for your attention.